Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. I love vacations. I always imagine beautiful places, good food, and lots of time to relax. But sometimes things don't go as planned. Sometimes a perfect trip becomes a little disaster.
That's true, Anna. Vacations can surprise us and not always in a good way. Today, we are going to talk about two very different holiday nightmares. One is about a big storm during a camping trip, the other is about a luxury hotel, but with no water at all. Can you imagine that?
Exactly. And here's the question for today. Which one is worse? A survival adventure in the rain or a hotel paradise without the basics? Stay with us because this is going to be fun and a little dramatic. Okay, let me start. I still remember that trip. It was last summer. I thought it would be amazing. A week in nature, a tent by the lake, fresh air, and no stress. We arrived, the sun was shining, and everything looked perfect. I set up the tent, unpacked the sleeping bags, and even cooked pasta on a small camping stove. I was so proud of myself. But then, everything changed. It started with some dark clouds in the distance. At first I thought, oh, just a little rain, no problem. But in 1 hour, the sky turned black, and the wind started to blow so hard that the tent moved like crazy. Then came the rain, not just normal rain, but heavy, cold, and endless rain. Water was everywhere, on the ground, inside the tent, even inside my shoes. I tried to save the sleeping bags, but they were completely wet in 5 minutes. The worst part? It was almost night. I was sitting inside the tent, holding the poles and listening to the storm. Thunder, lightning, wind, it was scary. I thought the tent would fly away. I had no phone signal, no internet, nothing. Just me, the rain, and the feeling that I made the worst decision of my life. When the storm finally stopped, everything was a mess. Mud was everywhere. The food was wet. I had no dry clothes, and the sleeping bag felt like a sponge. I spent the rest of the night sitting on a wet mat, waiting for the morning. Honestly, it was like a survival movie, but without the happy music. Chris, can you imagine that? Have you ever been in a storm like this?
Wow, Anna, that sounds terrible. But listen to my story. I think my experience was even worse because when you pay for luxury, you don't expect basic problems. 2 years ago, I booked an all inclusive holiday in a five-star hotel. You know, the kind of place where you imagine swimming pools, cocktails, and amazing food. I was so excited. I arrived and everything looked perfect. Big lobby, friendly staff, welcome drinks. I thought, this is paradise. But then, on the second day, I woke up and there was no water. No shower, no toilet, nothing. I called the reception and they said, sorry, technical problem. We are working on it. I thought, okay, maybe 1 hour, maybe two. But no, it lasted the whole day. Can you imagine being in a luxury hotel, sweating in the sun, and not being able to take a shower? And it was not just the shower. There was no water for drinks, no water in the bar, no water in the restaurant. People started to panic. Tourists were running to the shops to buy bottles of water, but the shops were empty after 10 minutes. In the evening, the toilets, well, you can imagine the smell. It was horrible. I remember sitting near the pool looking at the blue water, but I couldn't touch it. The hotel staff tried to keep us calm. They gave us a free cocktail, but how do you make a cocktail without water or ice? It was warm juice in a glass. People started shouting, complaining, asking for refunds. Then it got even crazier. Someone started a rumor that the water problem could last 3 days. People completely lost it. Guests began hoarding drinks from minibars, hiding bottles in suitcases, even taking juice boxes from the kids' corner. Everyone was whispering, checking their phones, and the atmosphere felt like the end of the world in a luxury resort. The dream holiday became a nightmare. So, Anna, what do you think? A storm is bad, but at least you were in nature. I was in a five-star prison with no water.
Chris, after hearing your story, I understand why you think it was terrible, but I still believe my experience was worse. When you go camping, you expect small problems like a little rain, not a violent storm in the middle of the night with thunder, lightning, and wind so strong it almost ripped the tent away. I was completely soaked. My clothes and sleeping bag were wet. I had no phone signal. I spent hours sitting in the dark, cold, and alone. I kept wondering if a tree might fall or if the tent would collapse. That feeling of isolation and fear was harder than anything. At least in your hotel. You had a bed and a roof. I was fighting against nature with no comfort at all.
Anna, I get it. But for me, nothing is worse than paying for luxury and losing the most basic thing: water. Without water, you can't shower, you can't drink, you can't even flush the toilet. And all this in 30-degree heat, while tourists panic and fight for bottled water in empty shops. The smell from the bathrooms was awful. People were angry. The hotel staff kept saying, "Everything is under control," when clearly it wasn't. I felt trapped in a place that promised comfort, but became a prison of frustration.
So, listeners, what do you think? Would you prefer a wild storm in a tent or a luxury hotel without water? Thank you so much for staying with us today and listening to our holiday disasters. Now, looking back, they sound funny, but in those moments, they felt endless and exhausting. I truly learned something important. Always check the weather before camping. Always bring extra dry clothes, some snacks, and maybe even a little chocolate for comfort. Nature does not always care about your plans.
And I learned that a beautiful hotel can hide the biggest problems. Next time, I will never trust the word all-inclusive completely. I will always keep a small emergency kit with water and essentials. Even paradise can turn into chaos without warning.
What about you? Have you ever had a holiday that went completely wrong? Maybe you have a funny story or a really scary one. We would love to hear it. Share it with us, and who knows, maybe your story will appear in the next episode.
Thank you again for listening. Take care and stay positive. May your next holiday be full of joy and zero disasters. See you soon in the next episode with more stories and laughter.